Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Vitamin C's with me, your boy Adam Taylor. As usual, I'm joined by my homie, my compadre, my co-host in crime, Mr. Tim Sheils. What's popping, Tim?
Just hanging in, man. Getting some of this rain now. Like we're finally getting into fall weather, and I can't lie, man. It sucks. Today is so miserable outside. I've just been a homebody today, but got some plans tonight. No basketball, but plenty of basketball over the past few days. We've got another game on Monday, so just rolling with it, man. Been
Yeah, I
good vibes
find
so
it really
far.
funny that
Yeah,
we were recording a lot of our episodes during we both had heat waves, right? And one of the commenters, Landon,
Landon. Oh man.
Tim Heatwave Shields, man. I found that hilarious.
Oh
That's going to be
gosh.
your new nickname, man, Mr. Heatwave.
Ugh,
Yeah,
I
if you're
wish it was
new here,
cold.
please make sure to hit that like button, that subscribe button, leave a comment, and turn notifications on. We'll be posting pretty much every day moving forward. Now we've got through some of the more technical stuff that we needed to figure out after joining CNS Media. But today we're here, we're talking ball. We're coming off 3 straight wins, I think, since the last time that we've done an episode. The team's on a 5-game winning streak. Did they move that to
Six.
six
It's
now?
been six.
6-game winning streak. I'm feeling good. The Celtics are definitely feeling good. Jason Tatum's feeling very, very good. But we're not here to talk about Jason Tatum today. Everybody else is talking about Jason Tatum today. So we're going to be a little bit different. We want to look at the role players. Role players have been stepping up big. Payton Pritchard's had big minutes. Sam Houser's had big performances. Grant Williams looks like he just believes that Batman hype was real and he's out here to save everybody. And then Marcus Smart, who I don't really classify as a role player, I see him more as like a primary member of the core. But he's out here proving that, like, yo, anyone that didn't believe he could be the point guard for this team, y'all were wrong. I mean, he's out here dropping double doubles pretty much every night, 10 and 10, if not more. We're going to get into it. I think the first place we should start, though, is with the guy that's been buried at the end of the bench for the majority of the season. All of a sudden, Malcolm Brogdon goes down for a few games with some hamstring issues, and Payton Pritchard's thrown straight into the lineup, comes in, doesn't really, like, his rhythm's not there shooting wise, and you wouldn't expect it to be, right? Like, we saw that with him last season when he was buried behind Schroeder. That shot was kind of inconsistent. Once he started getting more minutes, that shot became more consistent. But he's a hustler, man. He's going to give you points on the board. He was getting offensive rebounds, being that guy to just sneak in. His after dribble game's fantastic. And the one thing I really like is when Pritchard's in there, you can run more inverted screens, get better mismatches for Tatum. He's just a better off-ball screener than what most of the other guards on this team are.
I was really happy with you specifically touched upon his shooting. His three ball wasn't there. And that first game against the Nuggets, like to be clear, with Malcolm Brogdon day to day, I'm assuming he's probably going to be out for at least a few more games. And they're not going to rush him back, especially if they've got Payton Pritchard to lean on. Now, before we talked about me specifically saying, like, hey, if you're not going to use Pritchard, you should trade him. And then Malcolm Brogdon, of course, goes ahead, tweaks. He's got right hamstring tightness, whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, this is kind of what you expected with it. It's the same reason why they still got Payton Pritchard around. And this kind of just proves the point. You talk about rhythm. He went out against the Denver Nuggets and the three ball wasn't there. He only took 1 3-point attempt, missed it, and then was 5 of 6 the rest of the night. He was being super aggressive. Like you said, crashing those offensive boards. There was that one crazy sequence where the Celtics got like 4 straight offensive boards, kept the possession alive, and he goes in and just steals it away from DeAndre Jordan, picks his pocket, puts it up, and it like the garden just erupts. And like this is the kind of energy that you want. This guy is hungry. He wasn't getting any minutes. He was buried behind a bunch of other guards. And this is sort of what we talked about before with 3 really good guards ahead of him. But now with Brogdon injured, there's a really good opportunity for Pritchard to go in there and prove his worth. And I think maybe after a few more games, if he can keep up some solid play, Joe Mazzulla is going to have to figure out how he's going to stagger his minutes in there, because I don't think there's a way that you can really go back on that now. I think you need to find a way to get Pritchard minutes. It'll help Brogdon's workload. It'll keep him more fresh. And it's another body that's going to help you stagger some of these minutes, keep guys as fresh as possible.
I'm just not sure how you make that work, though, right? Like, if you look at the way this rotation set up, Brogdon is that backup guard. And then if you start reducing Brogdon's minutes to put Pritchard in there, did you mess with Brogdon's rhythm? Like, Brogdon's in a rhythm because he's playing starters level minutes off the bench. He's doing that Westbrook role that we've seen Westbrook start to thrive in as well. If you take away some of those minutes, do you still get the same level of Brogdon? Like, does he play with that same confidence, that same swagger? Or does he start thinking like, man, have I done something wrong? Like, these things are all like, they're very fluid and they're not mutually exclusive, right? Like, a large minute count doesn't necessarily mean you're going to put up good numbers or give good performances. But if you start reducing those minutes, it can have an even bigger negative effect than it can positive. So it's just finding out the right balance. I agree. I think Pritchard definitely needs minutes, especially with somebody like him that's a rhythm shooter, or somebody that can give you the additional ball handling, can push the pace, will fight on the boards. Downside is you are going to get attacked defensively, and the Celtics at the moment are still figuring out that defensive kind of identity. And you're rolling with Sam Hauser, and I know he's not a guard, but he's who second units are really targeting at the moment. Do you want two guys on the team on the rotation that can be targeted? When Hauser and Pritchard are on the floor together, that's a lot of pick and rolls to force switches onto a guy, and then you've only got 3 switchable defenders there that can really give you legitimate defensive minutes. I'm not saying Hauser's a bad defender. He's shown he's quite viable. He could stay in front of his man. He can contest shots, but teams are hunting him. And now if you put Pritchard in that rotation too, there's 2 guys for teams to hunt, and it just becomes a little bit more difficult to get that kind of rhythm defensively and continue finding that identity that helped them become the team they were last season.
Yeah, and I guess that's the big issue, right? Pritchard being undersized, at least with Hauser. We've touched upon it before, but Hauser's got good size, and it looks like he's improved overall with how he's trying to play defense, staying in front of his man, playing with energy. He's never going to be like a fantastic defender, but you never really needed him to be. You just needed him to be passable. And the big thing that he's supposed to be doing out there is providing offense. And so far, so good. I think the issue with Pritchard now is you need Pritchard to start hitting threes. And like, again, it goes back into that conversation about rhythm. Like, how do you get this guy who's supposed to be one of your like bucket getters off the bench into a rhythm if he doesn't have a consistent role? So again, it goes back to Joe Mazzulla trying to figure out these rotations, figure out how he's going to try and balance these guys out. And it's trying to find that defense at the same time. I think this team will be really, really good defensively once they get Rob back, because it's just another body out there. It's a guy who's going to be able to be used as a roamer. And I think it allows Al Horford to kind of change the way he needs to play defense too. But I'm still wondering if they're actually going to get back to that same level defensively. Because I think offensively right now, they're fantastic. And their bench depth has done wonders with that. There's so much ball movement. Everyone out there is capable of shooting threes. Even Luke Cornett, even though he's not getting a volume there, like he's still capable. Like you have to okay, he might shoot this. Like you have to think about that at least. And I mean, I think that's played into the way that this team has just operated offensively. So much ball movement, so much willing passing. And I just don't know what's going to change with the defense, because I feel like now this team is sort of trending in a direction where I think the identity is going to change. And a lot of that's based on how a lot of these role players and, key rotation guys have changed over this past offseason.
I mean, I've said this on many shows before. It's all about balance, right? There's no point being one of the best offensive teams in the league if your defense is bad. There's no point being one of the best defensive teams in the league if your offense is bad. Finding that balance, you don't need to be a number 1 defense, number 1 offense to be an elite team. A top 10 defense with a top 3 offense, you're elite. Top 3 defense with a top 7 offense, you're elite. Boston are slowly trending towards that top 10 in defense. They were down in 20th about a week ago. I think they moved up to around about, I haven't looked. I'm assuming they'll be around about that 14th mark now, but you can, again, like I say, I haven't actually looked at the numbers today. But what I'm saying is they're trending in the right way defensively. Now, no, they're probably not going to be the same team they were last season. It's a different coach. They're prioritizing offense. They're the best offensive team in the NBA. They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the NBA. They're chucking it at volume and converting at volume. Teams are just really struggling to figure out who to guard, when to guard them, and how to deal with pick and roll switches, etc. If you can get a top 10 defense, top 12 defense, you're going to be really tough to beat, because not only do you need to be able to score yourself, but you've got to figure out how to stop this juggernaut that's coming at you, and that's not going to be easy. So I'm not too worried about them being the 2021-22 Celtics on defense, because that was the Ime Udoka version of the Celtics. This is the Joe Mazzulla version, and this is, hey, we're going to run and gun. We've got some of the best offensive players in the NBA, and we're going to liberate them and let them play as free as possible on offense. Sometimes we might get silly plays like an after back board alley oop that just goes wrong. But for the majority of the time, you're going to get some good possessions in there. So I'm not concerned about the defense. If you can get into that top 12, top 10 area, they're going to be fine.
Yeah, and I think the differential is going to be the big thing, right? Because they've like a few games now put up 130 points and it's just looked effortless. In the most recent win against the Detroit Pistons, they didn't have anybody out there. Brogdon's out, Jaylen Brown is out, Al Horford's out. You already have Danilo Gallinari and Robert Williams out, and then you've got Jason Tatum going in there, going God mode, hitting 43 points. But another big part, as we kind of transition into this, Grant Williams, man, Grant Williams has looked fantastic. Again, this is a guy going into, contract. He's looking to get paid, and it's continued to look more and more so that he's going to get paid handsomely. And I think he's kind of shored up that forward position, right? I think now that they've got his minutes there in the way that he's playing right now, he's doing all the little things. He's playing aggressively. He's starting to cut more to the hoop. I've noticed a lot. And he's just kind of fleshed out his game even more. And this is a guy who obviously, yeah, getting paid is important, but also playing winning basketball is important too. And it seems like he's, walking the walk and talking the talk. And I'm just wondering now, do the Celtics try and, if they're going to target any kind of veterans, whether it be via trade or the buyout, are they going to be looking more at like the 2 or 3 spot? If they're looking for someone who could potentially give them any kind of wing minutes, and they're looking at the center minutes instead now, as opposed to like looking at a power forward. I know we mentioned the power forward spot before, someone who could play a little bit of 4, a little bit of 5. Has Grant Williams kind of solidified that rotation now?
No, not really, because he was already there, right? The concern wasn't that. The concern's if, like, God forbid, Jason Tatum misses some serious time. Then and then do you put, and say Rob's still out. So now Grant goes in as your starting 4, and now you're relying on Hauser to give you those minutes as the backup, right? And there's no one defensively minded or a two-way player that can really come in and give you anything, right? You're not going to play Blake at the 4. So you start being a bit more concerned. Now, I'm not saying you bring somebody in to take Hauser's minutes, but you definitely bring somebody in that can give you a different dimension. Right now, but with Grant, Grant's shown an ability now where he can hit floaters. He's scoring off the dribble. He's scoring off the catch. We're seeing more of his back to the basket game start to like flourish, right? We're seeing him come off shuffle cuts, which is a diagonal cut off a diagonal screen known as a wedge screen down into a post up position where he's then giving you some offense there. Rebounding's been a big improvement. His screening game's excellent. You see him often setting like zoom screens where it's a pin down into a handoff. He's just doing a bunch of the little things, and now he's added this ability to score on the inside. All of a sudden, he's a 3-level scorer, right? He can score from the mid-range with like that little push shot, can score down back to the basket in the paint, and we know he can hit threes. He's one of the best corner 3-point shooters in the NBA. Now he's showing he can hit it from above the break, he can hit it from the wing or the slot. He's just scoring wherever he wants to score at this point, but he's not forcing anything. Everything's coming in rhythm. Everything's a smart shot. He's willing to pass the ball along. He's not trying to take shots just to like pad his numbers. It's a total team effort from him, and that's why I believe that the Celtics might have made a bad decision in not extending him, because if he keeps playing like this, they're going to have to pay more than what he was probably asking for. But again, we don't know what he was asking for, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we've already heard like rumored offers. I think somewhere between like 15 to 18 might have been what they were looking at. And who knows, maybe they were looking at like longer years, or maybe they wanted to front load the contract. He wasn't with that, so on and so forth. The good thing is that it's restricted free agency. They're going to be able to match any offer that comes along. I know that teams are already, having to worry about the tax. Specifically, the Celtics are already considering that with any other potential moves they might make, even including like when they went out and got Blake Griffin. Like that adds to their tax pretty significantly, even for a vet minimum guy. So for Grant, in terms of this new contract, you do have to consider it to an extent, but I also think you're at the point now where you can't afford to lose him. Like you could take the tax hit, right? But you can't afford to have any kind of drop off at that position right now, because Al Horford's going to be a year older. He's hitting free agency. You have to figure out how much he's going to ask for. Al Horford had a fantastic performance the other night, like 21 points, 6 of 8 shooting from 3, which tied a career high. His shot selection from 3 has been crazy. He's like shooting threes on a 58.5% frequency. So most of his shots are coming from 3, and he's been doing really good there. That's going to help his game age even better. And if he continues to be good, that's going to change his contract situation. And then all of a sudden, the Celtics have 2 key guys who are going to be hitting the offseason free agency market, one of who is an RFA, the other is unrestricted. And we still don't know how that's going to pan out. Like, I'm not going to be all doom and gloom about it, but it is something that you have to consider going into this next offseason. Here's hoping that you can get Al Horford. My dream situation is you get Al Horford to take like a very team-friendly deal, finish career with Boston, like very graciously. And that would be great. Like, that's riding off into the sunset together. Like, happy, happy marriage there. And then Grant Williams obviously getting his fair due, getting his fair share of money because he's an integral part of what the Celtics are trying to do. He fits the system so damn well. He's a good locker room guy. Teams, are obviously going to be interested in him. So it's just a matter of what the market's going to be. I still think you throw him in the bag. I mean, you don't want to go crazy, but I think I top out at like 19 million at most. But who knows? The cap's going to change soon. Maybe teams are going to be a little bit more reckless this summer.
I mean, the one thing you got to look at as well that you haven't really mentioned is the following season, Jaylen Brown's a free agent.
Yes, that too.
And you need to manage the books well enough that you're not hamstrung in what you can offer him, or you're not pushing yourself too deep into the tax. Now, obviously, these are contract talks we can have later in the season, but it's definitely at the forefront of people's minds when Grant Williams is putting in performances like this. I'd probably top out at 20 million. I'd go 1 million a year AAV above, if and only if the performances we're seeing at the moment sustain all through the year, and that's the version of Grant Williams you're getting. Because the way I like to look at it is, hey, if you all of a sudden trim this rotation down to an 8-man rotation, if the playoffs start tomorrow, does Grant Williams get locked in? Is he a lock for one of those 8-man rotations? My answer is yes. So at that point, there's a certain level of remuneration of pay that comes with being a top 8 guy on a championship contending team that you need to kind of get paid to match that ability. So 20 million AAV is kind of like, I feel like it's an overpay, but at the same time, what he gives you, what he means to this team, he's becoming more of a vocal leader. He's becoming more of an impact guy in the way he plays and leads by example. So I'd be willing to part with that type of money, especially since it's not my money.
Yeah, isn't it really fun to talk about how other people like millionaires, billionaires spend their cash? I feel like that's
all Twitter does at the moment.
I know that's a whole mess. I mean, and going back to the whole idea of paying guys who are on a championship contender who play key roles in your rotation. You look around the league, like at some of these other teams that let guys go, mainly Golden State, like letting Gary Payton II and Otto Porter go, like that's killing them right now. And it sucks. The reality is that you have to pay guys though. Like you want that
Even
production.
Toscano Anderson, bro.
Yeah, that's another big one.
Another big energy guy off the bench.
Huge. And I also was going to say when we finally get to some of our other trade episodes, I think he's a guy that you should look at with LA. He's a 1-year deal. He fits into that disabled player exception that we talked about the other day. So maybe that's a guy that you look at. But again, you're losing key rotation guys there. And granted, I'm not saying that Grant is in their tier or vice versa. I'm just putting it in like the gray area of
in terms of impact and defense, and 3-level scorer able to defend against some of the best forwards, best wings in the entire NBA. We've seen him bang with big men like Jokic. We've seen him bang with guys like Giannis and hold his own. He's in a completely different tier to those guys. I'm sorry if people disagree, but as far as I'm concerned, defense is often overlooked. And when you're one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA, you've added enough to dribble game, you're flashing the back to the basket game, and you can defend these type of guys. You need to get paid the right amount of money. So I understand why Grant kind of held out and didn't just take what the Celtics offered. But I'm definitely of the opinion that, hey, he's a level above like a Porter Jr. or a JTA or those guys.
Well, I think that's fair. I was more so just in terms of context of like losing role players and like what it does to a team. Because if the Celtics like Grant Williams go, like you better have a really, really, really good backup plan that you're going to hit on. Because other than that, like you're letting a guy that is a proven commodity who fits in your system, who who helps your team win games. We've seen him do it. We've seen him do it in the playoffs too. He was huge against the Raptors back in the bubble. That's a guy that you can't afford to let go. And especially again, game 7 versus the Bucks, like insane performance. Like that's what you are going to end up paying him for, is because you're going to get those kind of performances out of him. But I digress. We should
And
probably
another
talk
player
about,
another player that you don't want to let go, and the
oh no.
Celtics never let go and made sure they tied him down because they saw who he could become. And now all of a sudden, and I'm very big on he's entered his prime, right? The Marcus Smart has entered his prime. And it's one thing saying this is what a player could be. It's another to be like, yo, this is what he could have been. And he actually hit that ceiling. And here we are, defensive player of the year, Marcus Smart, throwing 10 assists, hitting on like 10, 15, 16 points, throwing off the back ball passes, defending the best player on the opposing team. And this was a guy everybody said wasn't a starting point guard for a championship team. I mean, he's proved everybody wrong, right? Like, I don't think anybody at this point would be like, hey, Marcus Smart is not that guy.
I mean, and I think the biggest thing right now is his ball movement. That was always the knock that people had against him. And I've been a firm believer of when he buys in, when he's moving the ball and he's making the right decisions, he is the perfect fit for this team because he's not a defensive liability. In fact, he's a defensive monster. And instead of having a guy that's going to eat up shots like some of the other guards that you're going to see in the league that are starting point guards, like a Dame Lillard or a Kyrie Irving or Kemba Walker when he was playing, you've got a guy who's willing to sacrifice his looks and to keep the ball moving and give you top tier defense in the process. That's the guard. This version of Marcus Smart, this is the guy who got you to the finals last year as part of this core. And that's the guy that you need. And so far, I think we're seeing a different level from him offensively. Obviously, his shot's like not great, but it's never been that. It's more so just the shot selection that makes the difference, I think, for him. So when he's getting inside, when he's getting crafty, not necessarily trying to draw contact or fouls, but like finishing at the rim, finishing strong, being a crafty passer, but not a reckless one. Not when he tries to go flashy, sometimes it backfires. Exhibit A, that off the backboard attempt to alley oop to Jason Tatum.
That was more on Tatum than it was on Smart, though.
Yeah, he was mad about that after he talked about that in his post game. Was like, yeah, I was a little mad because it almost cost me my 10th assist of the night. But getting to that too, I mean, for the last 5 games, he's had 10 or more assists, and over that entire stretch, he's had a combined 6 turnovers. So like we're seeing this is what you want from Marcus Smart. Limited turnovers, insane amount of assists. I don't know if you can expect this from him constantly, but if this is what he strives for, if he's like, yeah, every game I want to try and get 10 assists, 10 like healthy assists. We're not talking Rondo forcing assists, trying to stat pad. It's just like, how can I be the best facilitator for this team? And going out and doing it.
And then you see the little advancements in his game, like his space creation off the dribble when he's making crossovers, the way he's able to seal guys on his hip quicker, his ability to drive the lane and then make those one-handed swing passes, being able to play in the post as a post-up threat, be able to score out of the post or play make out of the post. There's just a bunch of improvements that he's made that aren't overstated. They're really little things that all of a sudden they've kind of made him more of a complete offensive threat, and that's complementing the defensive play that he's had. And that's not to say that he hasn't always been able to do these things, but he was playing in more of a confined role. And maybe Missoula's just gave him a little bit more freedom to play the Marcus Smart way, but still without firing Marcus Smart type shots. So I'm a big fan of what he's doing at the moment. I genuinely believe that he's a perfect point guard for this team. He's definitely a point guard that you can rely on for a championship level team. And I don't think there's many teams in the NBA that would turn their nose up at the chance to acquire him.
No, and I think that's why you had so many teams interested if he was available on the trade market. I know the Timberwolves specifically were really, really interested in him before they went out and they got Pat Beverly. I know that was something that was, out there in the ether. I think the big thing for me, I also want to give my credence to Damon Stoudemire. Stoudemire's done apparently a lot of work with Marcus Smart on developing his game as a point guard. And I think, like you said, Joe Mazzulla coming in here, being offensive oriented, has kind of resonated with these guys. I think the way that they're playing right now, it just completely goes into the style of play that they want to play. All of a sudden it's, hey, if we're out there and we're running and we're spacing the floor. We're going out there with pace. We're moving the ball. The game becomes so much easier. These shots are falling because we have so much space. Teams don't know how to defend us. And for Marcus Smart, where it's like you need him to be the facilitator around here. You need him to be the guy getting guys open, helping quarterback that offense as well as that defense. It just does so much good for his game. Like you want to try and have him be a playmaker for this team, and then you're having him go out there and it's like, we need to get out there and run. We need to get out there, run and hustle. And that's exactly what Marcus Smart does and thrives in those kind of situations where it's playing fast, playing like chaotic and hectic. That's totally up his alley. And this is, I think, why we're starting to see this leap from him. The whole team is playing well, but him in particular, alongside Jason Tatum right now, are really, really starting to carry this team in terms of their playmaking.
Yeah, and if you look at like his willingness to step up when the team's playing poorly or there's a bit of disjointedness in the way they're executing things. If you look at the opening 5 minutes of that game against the Grizzlies the other day, Marcus Smart was the guy that teed everybody up. He was the one making sure everyone got their touches. When nobody was hitting their shots, he went and took it on himself to start scoring the ball.
Oh, yeah.
Then once he'd got a few points and he felt like the team had settled into the offense a bit more, he went back to being a playmaker. He wasn't trying to call his own number too often, but he was definitely not afraid to do so. And that's got the hallmarks of a solid leader, right? Like, hey, I've gave you the chance to shine. We're not there right now. I'm going to show you what we need to do. Boom. Okay, I've done this for a few possessions, and now I'm going to give you your chance to shine again. Now everybody's feeling that little bit more comfortable.
It's a tone setter, right? You talked about it a little bit earlier, where it's you have a guy who's leading by example, going out there and trying to establish a rhythm on offense. And again, he's not forcing it. For the most part, you've seen him kind of stray away from shooting threes. He'll take them if they're open, and that's what you would want him to do. That's what I would want any player on this roster to do. If you're open, you get the ball behind the three-point arc, and you've got the space to get it, you have to take that shot in order to keep defenses honest. And when Marcus Smart's hot, he's hot. Like he's going to hit those looks eventually. It's not always going to be there. And I think that's fine as long as it's not like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and take 9 or 10 threes. And for his credit, like he's gotten away from that kind of game and he's gotten more towards being the guy who's going to push the pace, who's going to get guys open, who's going to try and keep everybody moving on the offensive end, even if they don't have the ball in their hand. And it's been really awesome to see because I think there was a period in time where people were really, really hard on Marcus, and sometimes it still happens. But I think as these kind of performances stack up, it's going to be really, really hard for people to have that kind of argument and stand on one leg with that, because I don't see him not being the point guard for this team. You know, they went out and they got Brogdon. Sure, great. He's a facilitator. He's a fantastic guard too. But this is Smart's role. Smart is the starting point guard for this team, and he's not going anywhere.
He shouldn't be going anywhere. So anyone that does want him to go somewhere tough,
kick rocks.
Kick rocks, yeah. With that, we're going to leave you for another day. So, like, if anyone's noticed I'm kind of breathing heavy, I got a bit of a cold, I got a mad tough ache. I don't want to be speaking too much longer. We'll be back. We'll be back later in the week. Again, if you've made it this far, thank you very much. Make sure if you're not subscribed, that you do subscribe. If you are subscribed, consider turning on notifications so you never miss a new video drop. Tim, anything else you want to tell these lovely people?
No, thank you guys for watching. Keep an eye out for more content from us. We're really going to be honing in on this, and we're looking forward to it. So, peace.